My name is Laura Martins, and if you're reading or listening to this, it's because I've finally decided to tell the truth. Not the one my family has always sold at birthday parties, perfectly posed Christmas photos, or emotional wedding speeches, but the raw, uncomfortable truth. The one that no one admits out loud, but everyone feels in silence. The truth about what it's like to be the middle child in a family that only sees extremes, the prodigy and the problem. My older sister, Clara, was the heiress of my parents' dreams, medical school at 24, married to a renowned plastic surgeon, 2 daughters who looked like they came out of a Gap catalog. My younger brother, Kaio, was the rebel with charm, the one who never finished anything, but drew smiles from even the most grumpy uncles. And me, I was useful. I was the one who stayed with her mother in the hospital when she had the panic attack that no one knew how to deal with. I was the one who helped his father with the income tax, that she picked up her nieces from school when Clara forgot, that he lent money to Kaio to solve it only this month. And even so, no one saw me. They thanked me with a nod, with a "we'll talk later," with promises that never came. And for a long time, I accepted. I thought that was love. I thought that being nearby, even in the background, was better than being far away. But every illusion has an expiration date, and mine began to crumble the day my father fell ill in the living room. And absolutely no one warned me. It was on a Sunday morning. I was lying on my couch, cell phone in hand, watching empty messages from family groups. The ones where everyone says, "Good morning" with flowers, but no one asks how you really are. When the landline phone, yes, the one that only rings in emergencies, started ringing nonstop, I answered with an ice heart. On the other side, the voice of a neighbor of my father's. "Mr. Antonio fainted in the living room. The ambulance is already on the way." I was speechless, almost deaf. I went to the bedroom, grabbed my bag, a blouse, and ran away. I arrived at the hospital and saw my mother sitting in the corner of the reception, shaking like a leaf. I asked for Clara, for Kaio. Nobody knew. No one had been able to talk to them. And there, for the first time, I realized that the brilliant core of our family disappeared at the time that mattered most. I was the one who signed the papers. I was the one who held my father's hand when he came to his senses. I was the one who organized the hospital accounts. 3 days later, Clara showed up with impeccable hair and a Starbucks in hand, saying that life was crazy. Kaio sent a 7-second audio with a "sorry, I had no signal on the site." And my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, looked me in the eye and said, "I'm glad you were around." As if I were a predictable shadow, an extension of the house, a functional piece of furniture. And it was there that the first crack turned into an abyss. For the first time, it didn't hurt. For the first time, I was silent, planning. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone like me, it is leaving her alone too long. Because silence, for those who have always been ignored, is like ammunition. I started to see patterns. Contempt disguised as praise, manipulation packed in affection. The way Clara used me as a plan B for her daughters, but never invited me to important events. The way Kaio asked for money, but laughed at me with his friends. And the cruelest, how my parents programmed me since I was a little girl to be useful and not loved. "You're strong, Lara," they said. But what they meant was, "You can stand being beaten quietly." So I stopped saying yes. I refused to take care of the girls when Clara had dinner. I left Kaio in the void when he asked for money again. And I began to study, in silence, everything that had sustained that farce of a united family. Me, my deposits, my favors, my presents. I was the invisible glue. And now I was about to take off. It was at that time that I decided to record everything. The conversations, the requests, the subtle emotional blackmail. I started to write down dates, values, lies. Not out of revenge, still, but for lucidity. Because when you finally see yourself as the protagonist, you realize that the audience has always been blind. And there, with a notebook in my hand and a camera hidden in the living room lamp, I began my revolution in silence. The first time I heard my sister talk bad about me behind my back, I was 2 meters away from her. And she didn't even know. The camera on the lamp recorded every word. Lara is a poor, functional thing. He lives to please. He has no ambition. Her laughter, dry and superior, echoed through my room that night like a stab in the back. But what destroyed me the most was hearing my mother agree. If only she had followed Clara's path. It was the last time I cried because of them. From there, I started to build my arsenal. I registered the bank statements where Caio used my name as a guarantor for loans. I recorded the audios where my mother said, "You need to solve it, otherwise your father will freak out." I even found contracts from my father's company where he put me as an orange partner to escape taxes, all hidden under the facade of the reliable daughter. And then, on his 60th birthday, that lavish party full of businessmen, politicians, and friends of the elite, I decided it would be the stage. Instead of a congratulatory speech, I asked for 5 minutes on the microphone. I put the projector to run, and there, in front of everyone, I showed them what they had done to me for decades. The lines, the numbers, the abuses, the evidence. The hall froze. My mother turned pale. Clara screamed, "This is a montage," and left crying. Caio tried to attack me, was restrained by the security guards. And my father, he just lowered his head. For the first time, I was not ashamed. For the first time, everyone looked at me. Not with pity, but with fear. After the party, everything changed. Not magically, but definitively. Local newspapers ran stories about the scandal at my father's company. The revenue knocked on the door. Clara's clients canceled procedures. Gaius disappeared for a while, perhaps afraid, perhaps ashamed. And my mother? She tried to call me, more than 10 times. She left messages crying, saying that she was sorry, that she didn't know what she was doing. But I knew. They always knew. And that's what set me free. Because what holds us back most is not what they do. It is the doubt whether they did it out of malice or carelessness. When this doubt dies, we live. I took everything I had saved and turned it into something bigger. I wrote a book. I was called to give lectures on family emotional abuse. I created a channel. Maybe you're listening to this story through him. Today, people who were also invisible write to me every day saying, "Thank you for showing me that I exist." And you know what's most ironic? When I started to shine, my family wanted to come back. Clara sent flowers saying that the children miss him. Caio appeared asking for just a conversation. My mom said, "No one's perfect, Lara. But I don't want perfection. I want respect." Today, I am seen. Not because I screamed, but because I stopped whispering. Because I understood that I wasn't born to fit in the space I was given. I was born to build my own. And if you, on the other side, have ever felt like me, invisible, know, everything changes the day you decide to be your own witness. And more than that, the day you decide to be your own proof. The days following the exhibition were strange. There was no applause. There was no immediate relief. Only silence. But not that silence of peace. It was a dense, charged silence, as if the house, the streets, even my own body were waiting for the next explosion. And it came. I received a court notice. My parents were suing me for defamation and moral damages. Yes. Those who sucked me in, hid me, and erased me. Now they called me a liar. The irony was almost funny, if it wasn't so predictable. I sat on the floor of my apartment, with the summons in my hands and a bitter taste in my throat. "They want to shut you up again," I whispered to myself. But now it was different. Because I had a voice. And more than that, I had witnesses. People who saw it. People who felt it. People like me. I filed my defense and this time decided that it would not be a legal battle. It would be a collective scream. I gave interviews. I went to podcasts. I shared everything. And the more I talked, the more they lost control of the narrative. Because silence, when it is too forced, turns into a scream. And mine echoed. In each woman who wrote to me telling me about mothers who only knew how to criticize. In each man who was the invisible pillar of the family. In each child who grew up being the bridge for others to cross, and then was left behind. For the first time, the world listened. Truth alone does not liberate. That was the most bitter lesson I learned after the spotlight went out. Because no matter how much evidence I had, no matter how many words I said, my family was still trying to rewrite history behind the scenes. They started with the narrative of, "She was always too sensitive." Then they moved on to, "She's doing it for fame." And finally, the cruelest of all, "She's sick." A tabloid newspaper ran an article suggesting that I had untreated emotional disorders. The source? A close family member. I didn't have to guess who it was. It was clear. Always polished, always poisonous. the princess of the facade. And Kaio appeared on a podcast crying, saying that he just wanted his sister back. That performance made me vomit. And that's when I understood. The truth is not what you say. It's what people believe. If I wanted real justice, I needed to do what they had always done to me. Control the narrative. I created my own documentary series, without cuts, without filters. I spoke of emotional abuse, of erasure within families, of how love can become control. I showed documents. I showed screenshots. I summoned experts. And with each episode, the audience increased. And with it, clarity. Their pain now was that they could no longer silence me. Because I was no longer just a daughter, nor a sister. I was an author, a narrator, and above all, a threat. Because who controls the narrative controls pain. The news came by email, cold, clinic. We communicate that, due to the death of Mr. Antonio Martins, you were appointed as universal heir of the movable and immovable assets registered in his name. I read the sentence 3 times, hoping to understand what it meant. My father had died. Alone. At home. After a massive heart attack. And the most insane part? He left me everything. The house, the beach apartment, the company's shares. What was in my name for convenience? Now it was officially mine. Clara became hysterical. Kaio tried to challenge the will. My mother called me, sobbing, saying that, this is not fair. But fair. Since when did anyone in this family know what this was? I went to my childhood home alone, for the last time. I walked into the room where I grew up hearing that I should be grateful for not giving trouble. I opened the old closet and found a box. Inside, letters from my father. Letters that he never gave me. In them, he apologized. He said he knew how much he hurt me, that he was ashamed of having used me as a tool, who left everything for me out of remorse, but also out of respect. I cried, not nostalgia, but of relief, because there, on that yellowed paper, my father finally saw me, not as an assistant, not as shadow, but as a daughter, and perhaps, for the first time, as a human being. That inheritance was not made of goods. It was made of recognition. And even if late, it hurt more than any blow. Because sorry that it comes late. It is a type of sentence. It was on a cloudy afternoon that I met the woman who would change everything. Her name was Beatrice, and she was sitting in the front row of one of my lectures, teary-eyed and a notebook on her lap. When she finished, she approached and said, I didn't come here to listen to you. I have come to meet you. The sentence pierced me like an arrow, and it was then that I realized my story was never mine alone. It was an echo, a repetition of patterns, of erased women, of silenced children, of emotional legacies disguised as tradition. I started receiving letters, videos, confessions, people from all over Brazil, of the world. People who said, I was also the forgotten middle daughter. I was also the invisible pillar. I also recorded audios hidden, waiting to be believed. And at that moment, I understood that my pain became a bridge, that my trauma became a trail, that my scars were paving the way for others to see themselves, to get up, to break free. I remembered my grandmother, a woman who died saying, a straight woman is the one who is silent. And I felt like I was dusting off her words with every sentence I dropped into the microphone. The emotional currents of my family. They were breaking in each text, each lecture, each shared cry. And even with fear, with pain, with threats, I continued. Because when we break the chain, we don't just free ourselves. We opened the cell to everyone who came chained with us. It's been exactly 1 year since I first stepped onto that stage, my voice trembling and my eyes wet. And today, when I look at myself in the mirror, I see another woman. Not because I stopped feeling pain. It still lives here in every unrecognized memory, in every hug that never came. But because now it serves me, not the other way around. My mother lives in a smaller, remote house with the curtains always closed. He never forgave me, but he always watches my interviews. Clara abandoned medicine and reinvented herself as a coach. A good irony. And Kaio? Well, Kaio still tries to blame me for everything. But it no longer has a stage. I finally wrote my book. I launched it with the name that previously defined me as a failure, The Invisible. And the most beautiful? It doesn't end with victory. It ends with movement. Because being seen is not a point of arrival. It's a process. A right. a silent revenge against everyone who wanted you to bend. Today, I am called a reference, voice of emotional resistance. But I still get emotional when a 17-year-old girl writes to me saying, "You saved my future without even knowing me." Because that's where the real revolution lives, not in the noise we make, but in what we arouse in others. I was never invisible. They just didn't want to see me. And now, they can't look anywhere without seeing my reflection stamped on the cracked mirror of guilt they've tried to hide for so long.